Doing so Strength Chat episode 25, and I have got a very special guest. So today I am joined by Bryce Lewis. He is a coach over at the Strength Athlete, and he's two-time USA Powerlifting Raw national winner, champion. How are the preparations for Calgary going?
Hey, how's it going, guys? They're going very well. I'm now just a little over a week out, about a week and a half out, and kind of rounding out the end of work type stuff before we kind of start this deload leading into the competition. So it's great. Just finished a few calls talking about attempt selection, and kind of feeling good in these last few days.
Is that far for you to go from where you are then in America?
No, it's actually pretty easy. It's in the same time zone as Denver, Colorado. I'm in Fort Collins, just north. And essentially the Rocky Mountains extend from the United States all the way up into Canada.
Yeah.
And we are just east of the Rockies where we are. And Calgary is just east of the Rockies up in Canada. So it's basically straight north.
Oh, that's not bad then.
Yeah.
Not many flights or anything. So before we get going then, just a little bit of background of yourself. How did you get into powerlifting, and how did you sort of progress into becoming a coach and that sort of stuff?
I started playing volleyball in high school. I enjoyed it a lot. Indoor 6-person volleyball. I transitioned from there to bodybuilding as I was trying to find ways to make myself stronger and, bigger and faster and stuff. I started liking the workouts more than the volleyball and kind of saw some competitive bodybuilders and switched to bodybuilding for a little while. And then after competing on stage for two and a half years,
okay,
I realized that I liked the heavy lifting a lot, and the reward of getting on stage just didn't kind of sink in. And I stuck with the heavy lifting, did a few powerlifting competitions, and then just really enjoyed it. And I've been doing that for the last 7 or so years.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, I started coaching. I own and operate a company called the Strength Athlete, and we work with athletes around the world with training and nutrition and mindset and education and as many ways that we can be involved in powerlifting as possible.
Yeah.
And that's been wonderful. And a little bit later this year, we're just coming up on our 5-year anniversary.
Nice. Have you got anything planned for the 5-year anniversary?
We're thinking about it. On the marketing side and on wanting to give back to the community, we want to do some kind of giveaways or something like that. But I really want to take a moment to celebrate the work of the coaches and the athletes who make this company what it is.
Yeah.
Because without them, we have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know from attending one of your seminars when you're over in the UK, all the other guys that came over were really, I really enjoyed listening to them. The knowledge that they have was crazy, really. The amount of notes I took away was really, really good, and the content put you out there, it's really good.
I'll tell them that for sure.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a little bit, or you've said the word, which is what I basically want this chat to be about, the different areas of powerlifting and the mindset of powerlifting, of competing, of lifting.
Yeah.
How important do you think the mindset is when you're training, when you're competing? What does it actually mean to have the right mindset when you're competing or lifting in powerlifting?
I don't you can get stronger without having the right mindset. If your body is moving volume, you're going to have an adaptive stimulus that causes you to get stronger.
Yeah.
However, the mind can be a significant component to how much stronger you get. And I think the best analogy is that on the whole, it won't determine a whole lot. However, if you have two athletes of similar ability, especially in advanced levels, mindset can oftentimes be the determining factor between those two athletes and their ability to perform. So how well do you perform under pressure? How well are you able to put yourself back in that state of optimal performance for you specifically, and how reliably can you kind of call back on that over time? So I think at lower levels, it doesn't matter as much. At higher levels, it probably is one of the things that can separate you from your opponents.
Okay. How do you mean? Is it a case of just wanting it more, or in a case of not giving up, or the mentality of, because you can always think about if you're over confident, something like that, sometimes that can be to your detriment. What do you sort of, how does it have an effect on it at the elite level?
I think in powerlifting specifically, and this might be different from some other sport, but I think powerlifting specifically, it is maintaining composure in a tight competition, going out on the platform and being able to duplicate what you do in training. So essentially maintaining low levels of anxiety, and kind of being able to call on that state of optimal arousal as well. So for some athletes, that's getting super hyped. For other athletes, that's just kind of being calm and collected. But kind of big changes like that, compared to what you're used to, can really change your performance out on the platform. And if we're talking about the difference between a made lift or not, it might make a difference. So this may be different from other sports or something like that, where, for instance, in a marathon, you kind of have to will yourself constantly for 3 or 4 or more hours in order to reach the finish line. For powerlifting, we have, 8 seconds under the barbell at most, but those 8 seconds have to be perfect, Yeah.
How do you think, so I know from myself starting out, I did it just because I really enjoyed it. I got into powerlifting because I really enjoyed it. And now that I've got a couple more competitions under my belt, I know the last competition I did was in November, and I was aiming for a podium finish. So it was a little bit, right, I need to sort of start picking my last lifts when it came to bench and deadlift. And I knew that a couple of people were in and around me. How has your mindset changed from starting out to how it is? Do you think you always keep doing it because you enjoy it, or is there still that element there, and then it becomes a little bit more, right, I need to be a little bit more tactical? How has your mindset changed?
I vacillated back and forth between this as I've gone forward. When you start, there really aren't opportunities for external rewards, for records or placings or money or things like that, these external rewards. When you start, there really aren't those. And then as you progress, if you're lucky, you have opportunities to kind of work your way towards some of those. And that changes the nature a little bit of competition from being purely about you to being about you versus other people. So, kind of this reference norming, or this norm referencing, where you now have to figure out how you compare to other people instead of just focusing on you. That tends to reduce the amount of intrinsic motivation that athletes feel, which in some cases is natural, but intrinsic motivation is a strong driver. And I think most people need to have at least some degree of intrinsic motivation in order to get in the gym, 4 or 5 times a week for years in a row to do what you have to do. For a while, I lost that intrinsic motivation, and I was just focusing too much on rewards and too much on placings and stuff like that. And I kind of had to bring the focus back to myself and just do this for me because, hey, it's fun. I love doing it and stuff like that. So we kind of have to balance these two needs, this intrinsic reward and this extrinsic reward too. And the higher up in level you go, and you see this across sports, everyone is kind of facing the same balance. Yeah.
I think a little bit like what you just said there about the extrinsic reward. In November, it was the first time that I'd ever been in a position to say, yeah, I want to go for a podium finish. Everything leading up to it was, I just want a PB. I want to beat what I did before. So it's weird how that changes, and everyone who I've spoken to, and what I say to the guys in my powerlifting club is, you do it because you enjoy it. If you ever stop enjoying it, and it becomes a chore, or you keep marking yourself against other people, you probably might not do as well.
Yeah.
Another thing that's sort of mentioned about sort of the mindset of lifting is, some people, and it's each to their own. Some people get really, really worked up for a lift, and they do that in training, and obviously in competition. Some people are a little bit more quiet and that sort of stuff. Do you think, or what's your opinion on if people are getting psyched up for a lift in training, headphones on, not necessarily replicate the competition? Do you think that can sometimes have a negative effect, or do you always have to try and be consistent in everything that you do?
It's a good question. we really just can't practice true competition environment in training because there's no audience, there's no judges, there's no lights, we just can't replicate that in training, and there's no pressure. You know what I mean? You don't have to make this lift. Mm-hmm. However, as much as possible, I try to tell people to mimic what they do in training on the platform. If you have a ritual that you do every time you approach the squat bar for, a heavy single, and that includes yelling at the barbell or pacing back and forth, or if that includes a specific song or whatever the case may be, I want them to take that stuff and apply it on the platform, because why not? We want them to take this formula for success that they've built and apply it in the future. Yeah. And I think it's a little ambitious to think that we know better than the athlete what works best for them. Mm-hmm. So this kind of curve of arousal, especially for powerlifting, seems to be pretty extreme. Some people are very calm lifters. Some people are extremely kind of high energy lifters. And I've seen examples of both, and examples of both that work really well. Mm-hmm. I think the key is repeatability, though. So finding something that you can do again and again.
Yeah. Do you sort of, for the clients that you coach, do you sort of recommend and advise? Because I know for me, my setup is the exact same every single time. Do you sort of recommend people to find a routine and get that routine every single time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a best case scenario, it's so repetitive that it's automatic, that you don't even have to think about it anymore. And you see this across sports too. When we develop motor patterns, we don't want the athlete to think about performing the motor pattern. We want them to think about, drive, or having this kind of collected sense of confidence under the barbell, instead of thinking, oh, push my knees out, oh, descend a little slower or a little faster, or all these internal cues that they might kind of be rehearsing in their head.
In terms of, still on sort of that topic, in terms of on an actual competition day, how much sort of emphasis do you put on the lifter being a little bit more independent? Because I know there's a guy, Chris Kershaw, who always does my numbers on competition day, and I'm always under the impression that what works for me is always, he just tells me what to do. I have my headphones in. I don't have any say in sort of what goes on, and I kind of like that. And then I can go onto the platform and be like, right, this is my part. What's sort of your take on a competition day? Do you think there should be a little bit more independent on the athlete, or do you think it should be a case of it should be that automatic that they already know what to do?
Yeah. In a best case scenario, you have had talks with the athlete in advance about what they need, what works best for them. Yeah. And you're able to replicate that. So as a handler on meet day, or as a coach on meet day, you have to meet the athlete where they are, and you have to kind of cater yourself to their style. So some people want to be slapped up, right before they go out on the platform, being told, like, this is your weight, you're going to kill this, let's go. And some of their athletes want essentially just you to be in their corner, to just be there for them, with them, kind of in a more advisory, calm, collected role. As they are more anxious, they kind of feed off your calmness and kind of help balance things out that way. So it's really about finding out what works best for the athlete. And maybe that takes more than one competition. Maybe it takes a few, but it certainly takes a few conversations with the athlete to come up with what works best for them. And I really don't think there's one size fits all strategy for that.
Yeah, I think the more, especially with the people in the powerlifting club, in terms of as well with programming and anything, it is based on the individual. So still on the topic of competition, just stepping away from chatting about people who maybe have already competed. Quite a lot of people in my powerlifting club are beginners, and some people walk in. So we recently did some testing, and some people were really confident. They were like, "Yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to get." Other people are a little bit, I'm a little bit unsure to test. For beginners, would you say that you should be feeling nervous? Do nerves help with your performance and that sort of stuff? How should they be for testing?
I think almost everyone feels nervous, but I think it matters how you process it. So going into a heavy lift, it's almost inevitable that you're going to feel some level of anxiety at having, at least attempting something you have never done before.
Yeah.
But how you internalize this type of anxiety matters a lot. So if you view it as a challenge, if you view these signals as your body telling you that you're about to do something you've never done before, all of that is natural and expected. Or, you know, viewing this as something fun, something exciting, or something that you're ready for, but still has you feeling kind of higher than normal levels of heart rate, blood pressure, and stuff like that. Sweaty palms, all these kind of like signals of anxiety. That stuff is perfectly fine. Confidence comes from many different areas. So there's like a kind of a multifaceted view of where confidence comes from. One of the big things confidence comes from is previous experience. So if you know that you've succeeded previously, you're going to be more confident of your ability to succeed in the future, right?
Yeah.
For beginners, they really don't have this background of success in the past. And so that's kind of something that just has to build over time. You have to kind of prove to yourself, hey, I've PR'd in the past, or I'm comfortable with 400 pounds, so 410 won't be so bad, or these kind of things, these deals that you make with yourself. This background of previous experience and previous successful experience can help determine how successful you're going to be going forward. Ritual can help too. So getting under the barbell and doing the same thing, so you don't have to think about it, and just kind of being able to focus on the execution of completing the lift. Having friends and support there and vicarious experience, and then just a background of training that supports this lift, and probably some type of coach or authority figure or something like that who is in your corner and wants you to succeed as well.
Yeah. So with like I said about the beginners in the powerlifting, from a coach's point of view, sometimes when people start, like when you mentioned about putting, I've done this weight before, I can do that regularly and then increase it. How would you go about? Because I find sometimes, especially beginners, they're a little bit frightened to put weight on the bar to get comfortable with a certain weight and then build it up. As a coach, how would you go about pushing them to increase it a little bit more and giving them the confidence to do it? What's your sort of take on that?
There's a lot of things you can do. Number one, introducing the lifter to autoregulation and rating RPEs is good. So that you have this kind of common language of how difficult something was.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, especially with early athletes, they can rate RPEs and be wildly off from what the RPE actually was, both with it being too heavy or with it being too light.
Yeah.
And this is where video can come in too. So have the athlete take video of their lifts so that you can take a look afterwards, and the athlete says, oh my God, that felt so heavy. You take a look at it and it moved perfectly fine. So you can tell the athlete, hey, look, I know you thought this was heavy. Everyone has this experience of things being heavier than they look. But look at this video. Take a look and see how fast this is moving. You're good for the next jump. And let's kind of go from there. So using video to validate their thoughts on how difficult something was, I think is a good way to go. In terms of training, you can either give them like sets of 3 and 4 that are pretty difficult and sneak up on progress. So oftentimes athletes will be scared to do something for a single. Like maybe they've only ever hit 400 for a single, but it was somewhat easy, but they're scared to go up. Give them 400 for a triple. And so all of a sudden now they've done this weight for a triple, and they're capable of going up now with this confidence of having bested their previous performance. Of course, you can also give them singles as well. And you can give them singles at increasing RPE week to week, singles at 7, 8, 8.5, as they kind of are able to get their feet wet into heavier weights without it being so do or die.
Yeah. With the beginners, what have you found usually works best? Because as soon as I mentioned maxes to the guys in my powerlifting club, everyone was thinking, "Oh my God, how am I going to do a 1 rep max?" But if I say, "Okay, we're going to do a heavy double or a heavy triple," they seem a little bit, they're still a little bit nervous, which I think is good. What have you found to work best, or is it just really dependent on who it is?
I think it depends on how far they are out from a competition and how beginner they are. if they're true beginners, there's really no good reason to get down into singles for quite a while. You can get good data on the athlete and their progression in higher rep ranges perfectly well. And if you want to include singles, you can include singles at RPE 6 or something like that, just to get them used to the idea of just doing one rep and re-racking the barbell. But there certainly is a mental baggage to the word max out, doing the most you've ever done before. It's kind of equivalent to saying, okay, you're going to run a marathon versus you're going to run 15 miles. Like the two of those are extremely close to each other, right? But saying marathon is kind of like a really scary word. So you can warm them up to the idea or kind of fill them with confidence, as we talked about, with some past experiences or other athlete successes. Even living vicariously through other athletes can work as well. But yeah, there's going to be some level of nervousness, and that's okay. That's expected. So telling them like, hey, look, the feelings you're feeling right now are natural. Let's start with warm-ups. Let's take things one lift at a time. Let's see how we go. And we're going to stop when we both feel uncomfortable. Okay. And just kind of going from there.
Yeah.
So I think removing some of the pressure is really important.
Yeah. So alongside that sort of, when people are going for lifts, one of the topics that was covered in the seminar that you did when you were over in the UK was the difference between training men and women. And women can hold or do a lot more volume, so they might be doing quite a lot of reps near their 1 rep max. I've started. There seems to be a big influx of women at the minute into the powerlifting club, which is a good thing, and they're repping quite a lot. They're repping weights close to their 1 rep max, but yet the 1 rep max hasn't increased massively. How do you go about just talking them through that and thinking, it'll come, like, don't worry about it too much?
Yeah, I think they have to dissociate a little bit from estimated 1 rep maxes because those are going to give them numbers that are way too inflated. Right. It's common to see athletes hit 95% or female athletes hit 95% for like a set of 4 or 5 or something like that. Yeah. And then go and attempt their 100%. And it's like, 2.5 kilos more or something like that, which the estimated 1 rep max would not predict. Like, oh, you're good for 30 kilos more, like load it up. And it doesn't work that way. So kind of having that conversation with athletes, like, look, your training is going to look a little bit different from some of the other athletes in this club here. Let's just expect that as we go forward and kind of make this our new normal. I think that can be a good idea.
Yeah. So just being open with them and just saying it is going to be a little bit different. So I know some of the guys, they struggle with the volume. It's nowhere near their 1 rep max. So the more there's been a variety of people coming to the club, the more it's been interesting seeing how different people have responded to training.
Yeah, I think you want to. Sorry, that's my dog.
It's all right. What type of dog you got?
Chocolate Lab. Sequoia.
Yeah.
All right, baby. You want to be open with the athlete. So you want to make sure that they're aware of what to expect. I think is the big one. So if they know that, okay, this 95% for a set of 4 or something like that is high, but it's expected, then I think they're more comfortable with expecting what to do for their 1 rep maxes down the road.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to chat about, partly it's currently to do with my training leading up to the competition that I'm going to do in July, and partly from what some of basically I was unsure what to say to some of the people that I train. Patience. So being stuck on the same weight for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Do you think patience is a trait that probably more so in powerlifting you have to sort of accept, or how do you sort of manage that?
Yeah, I mean, in all sports, we start off with a lower level of skill set or, ability in some way, speed or strength or endurance or something like that. And we progress towards a higher level of that skill. I think for powerlifting, that is drawn out even further because you can start doing powerlifting, at a young age, and you don't have to finish when a lot of the other sports finish. You can finish way past the prime, quote unquote, of other sports. And so, you can, if you avoid injury and major setbacks and you continue enjoying it, you can powerlift for, 50 years or something like that, and get better over that period of time, over that whole period of time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of patience that athletes need to have, and kind of a great deal of perspective. It takes a while to get stronger. And as you get even stronger, it takes a while to get even stronger. So early on, as we know, it's pretty easy to put on strength. And after a certain period of time, fighting for those extra 2.5 kilos gets harder and harder. And you kind of have to remind yourself, why am I doing this? What's the joy in this for me? What am I looking for out of this as you go forward? Which is really important to kind of consider every now and then. But patience is a huge part of it. However, as athletes, we don't want to be stuck on the same maxes for too long, or we want to try to do some more problem solving to try to figure out what's going on. And I think as long as we find ways to measure progress, and as long as some of those ways of measuring progress are going up on a somewhat regular basis, then we can be happy. So we don't need everything to be going up all the time to be happy. And we don't need everything to be going up in dramatic rates to be happy too. And a great way to view that is something Matt Gary posted a while ago. Matt Gary is one of the coaches here in the United States. He's been a coach for the Raw national team for the United States, and just a great guy.
Yeah.
He said, hey, if you could put 50 kilos on your total in 5 years, would you be happy with that? And everyone's like, well, yeah, that sounds amazing. You know what I mean? And when you draw that out, that looks like adding 2.5 kilos to each lift, 3 meets a year, which is nothing. You know what I mean? It's just ticking up just barely on your lifts. And that's how it adds up. So oftentimes we have to play that long game and just be aware that we have to have some patience in looking at not only where we're going to be tomorrow, but where we're going to be in 5 years from now.
Is that, I suppose that's like what we chatted about at the beginning, that intrinsic motivation, why do you get up, why do you go to the gym and keep doing it? In terms of measuring other success, is that sort of going on to a programming side of it? Is that where you try and get, as a coach, people to, push some of the non-competition lifts, if they're doing front squats or something like that, try and measure success with that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to go. So instead of just limiting yourself to successes on the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, we can look for successes on other lifts. We can look to increase other lifts. Basically, finding more ways to measure progress, I think, is going to help the athletes stay motivated for longer, as they can continue to see that something is getting better. And in powerlifting, we have so many ways to measure things that I think people sometimes get kind of myopically focused on the 1 rep max for the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, because that's what we see in competition. But outside of competition, especially if we're going to do this for a long period of time, we get to talk about body composition, increased muscle mass. We can talk about rep PRs. We can talk about hitting the same weight at a lower RPE. We can talk about getting better on a specific exercise. We can even talk about mastery of the lifts themselves. So I'm moving with better technique than I ever have before. Or my mental game when it comes to approaching training sessions is better than it ever has before. So there's lots of these ways to get better, and kind of expanding our list is important.
Yeah. When you mentioned about form, the whole thing that I find that people first getting into powerlifting need to learn is that obviously strength is a skill. It's not something that you can just. I actually had one guy ask me, "Can you teach me to be stronger?" I can't really teach you to be stronger. I can give you the program. You've sort of got to. It takes time to build and push on from there. So what? Just to sort of round the episode off, then, what would be your best piece of advice or tip for people getting into powerlifting, or for people who are competing who struggle sort of with their mindset and that sort of stuff?
Man, there's so many directions we could go with this. I would say probably the largest piece of advice is while we're in this kind of interconnected world and you can see other people's progress and you can be excited about other people's progress, at some point you have to bring the focus back to yourself and be happy with your own progress, be happy with your own ability to progress day to day, month to month, and year to year, and find some internal satisfaction going forward with that, because that's the kind of thing that drives you forward. Comparisons can be amazing, but they can also shoot you in the foot as well, kind of sapping some of those feelings of happiness that you experience when you are thinking about your own progress. So stay focused on you, celebrate the wins often, celebrate multiple types of wins, and just do this for you because you enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best piece of advice you can give, really. I know I keep doing it because I enjoy it, and yeah, it's glad to hear that someone at the top level still does it because they enjoy it as well. So thanks very much for taking the time to chat with me. I'll post anyone who has any questions or want to get involved in the Strength Athlete. I know you guys put some really good stuff out there. I'll put your information on there. What's the best way to find you or the Strength Athlete?
You can follow us at the Strength Athlete on Instagram at the Strength Athlete. Our website shows some of our coaching options. We have some free programs and some resources there. That's thestrengthathlete.com. And of course, you can follow me at Bryce_TSA on Instagram. And you can also send me an email anytime you want by using the contact button, and I'd be happy to speak to you guys.
Spot on. So thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you all next week.